What's up, everybody? We are back. Welcome once again to another episode of the Brotherly Glove podcast after a brief hiatus. We are still two brothers from Philly talking all things Philly sports. We have seen it all, the best and worst, the ups and downs, the players and coaches, the Hall of Famers and the duds to come through Philly, all of it. We have watched it all and we have covered it all. 40 combined years of sports media coverage between me and the researcher extraordinaire, John Fisher. In today's episode, we have a struggling Phillies team and playoffs to talk about. We'll go over all things we feel are the biggest problems for the basketball team, plus a game of is it early or is it broken for the baseball team? The Sixers looking as bad as they can in game one. Do they avoid the sweep? Gentlemen's sweep? I don't know. But first, we're going to start with the positives. The Flyers looked great in game one victory over the Penguins. They'll play tonight. This team is hot, Johnny. But before we get into that, what's your tempo on life in Philly sports right now as another cold front comes to the Northeast?
Flyered up. Baseball season is here. We got t-ball practice tomorrow night. But
oh yeah,
but the real thing, yeah. I mean, it's playoff time, and the Flyers game was awesome on Saturday night, and I'm legit flyered up for tonight.
I love it. It's funny how much an energetic group can really bring you back. You know, I think that the Flyers are a team that everybody kind of always keeps an eye on. Hockey, maybe if you're a diehard, is your number one go-to, but it's kind of lower on the pecking order for a lot of 4-for-4 Philly fans. So to see this team who had up and down season just kind of come together at the end. I saw a great tweet. They were like the Penguins are doing it on veteran leadership. The Flyers are doing it on the power of friendship. It's just like a bunch of young dudes getting behind each other. And this, obviously, the first game of the playoffs was a huge win. They really set the tone early in that one. But this has been building for a little while now. We had Adnan Effect on a few months ago now, and he wasn't sure where this team was going to go right around the Olympic break. And I don't think that sentiment was very different from most fans in the city. Then they go 16-6-1 down the stretch. They've played great since the return of Tyson Forrester. They call it the young kid in Porter Martone. And it's just, they feel like not a team of destiny. That's a really cliche thing to say, but they feel like they're firing on all cylinders, John. So what's been your thought about this team leading in before we get into the game one heroics?
Yeah, everybone's calling it. Everyone in Philadelphia is calling it the Adnan Effect. They're 19-7-1 since we had Adnan on to talk about the Flyers on the podcast. And you mentioned even the hotter streak down the stretch. It's an insane record. I'm looking it up as we go. Porter Martone has played 10 games total, I think. Yeah, 9 in the regular season and the playoff game. And I mean, they were already hot, but he's added a nice jolt. I mean, they lost his first 2 games, and then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 out of 8 after he entered the lineup. And he scored the game-winning goal in their first playoff game in 6 years. And they're being led by, like you said, the jolt. And the jolt of energy, I thought it was really striking that Martone scored the game winner, and the first goal of the game was scored by the guy they got when they were forced their hand to trade away Gauthier. And I think it's just been awesome that those guys stepped up big, and that's a defenseman and a kid who was playing college hockey 2 months ago. And they roll into Pittsburgh and steal game one. And I don't know how far this can go. I mean, teams are seeded a certain way, but like, hockey's a different kind of sport, man. And in any game to get up, or any sport to get up in game one of a playoff series, even if they don't pull it out tonight, they're back home this week. And I know people are nuts down there. This is going to be awesome. It really feels like they're building something here and have a real shot to keep advancing.
Yeah, man, watching Martone has been a revelation of sorts. You know, watching other sports, one of the biggest challenges for players coming in is, well, the season's longer. They're not used to playing this much. And they took him right off the college ice and were like, go ahead, kid, go see what you got. And the impact that he's made, again, he hasn't been the one scoring all these goals, but he's been in the right place at the right time. He just has a knack for crashing the net and not overselling, so that way he's giving up something on the other end. He finds ways to be in advantageous positions, whether it's for himself or for his teammates. I love this stat from Sam Kachardi. He he tweeted out right at the end of the regular season, they averaged 2.84 goals per game before Martone arrived. They averaged 3.67 goals per game in the 9 games that he played to end the regular season. And like you mentioned, he gets the game sealer there in the third for the Flyers. It's just a lot of excitement from him. And then it almost feels like the other young guys on the team have responded very positively. The leaders on the team have responded very positively. You know, you have guys like Sean Couturier playing in a lesser role and thriving in it instead of feeling like it was a demotion, right? So it really just feels like everybody is aligned with, hey, let the youth go do it. Michkov's playing better. There was all that talk early in the season about he wasn't in shape coming in, but he's in shape now, and it's showing what the kind of impact that he can have on a lineup. Like you said, the Adnan effect, we talked about the Michkov stuff with Adnan, and he said, you know, maybe it's something that they're overblowing. It was a fact, but once he gets into shape, we'll see who he is, and here he is performing as good as anybody could have expected.
Yeah, he has a point. He's played 10 games. He has a point in 7 straight games, which was, you know, includes a stretch run where they needed to win almost every game to get into the playoffs, and then his first career playoff game at 19 years old. He's so it's been obvious. And I'm not a hockey expert, so I can't talk about the details, but I just know watching, you know, there's goals. I don't want to say a lot of goals look the same, but like there's ways you try and score, right? Rebounds, slap shot, power play when you try to set things up. Like that goal that he had was just, it looked different. You know, that was just a really talented player moving the puck, holding on to it, creating something, and doing something that I don't think a lot of guys can do, and scoring a goal. And it ended up being the game winner. It was huge for them. So just, again, with my limited hockey knowledge, he stands out on the screen when I turn it on. It's really fun. And, you know, especially being, like I said, lined up with the Penguins. So I was watching a game the other night, and whatever, you know, I try to watch stuff. You know, if the Phillies aren't on, like I haven't watched a lot of hockey, but I had on. It was the Wild and the Stars, I want to say, and the atmosphere was incredible. And they ended up playing each other in the first round of the playoffs too. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, hey, if I have the time and the Flyers are back in the playoffs, I'm in on this. You know what I mean? Right. I'm going to be watching, and I'm watching tonight for sure.
Yeah, man, the electricity that is playoff hockey is palpable through the screen when it's not your team. You have a team that is, or a fan base rather, that is desperate for this playoff moment. Haven't made the playoffs since 2020. Haven't been in the playoffs with fans able to be present since 2018. It's a long stretch for this group, and when you have on top of it we'll get to the Sixers, but they get blown out in their first playoff game. You have a struggling Phillies team, which we'll talk about. You have an offseason for the Eagles filled with controversy and whatever else you want to talk about, with questions about the coach and the quarterback and the wide receiver. And all of a sudden you have this group of just young kids, and they are giving you something that you've wanted desperately. And I'm really excited for game 2. We'll talk about that in a moment, because I just want to talk about a little bit of the history. You know, we talked about them playing the Penguins. The last time they had playoff hockey in Philadelphia with fans present was 2018 against these Penguins, and these fans want revenge as badly as the players on the ice do. So it's been a storied history between these teams. And Johnny, we remember fondly about one of the greatest playoff games that we can recall. We were in 2 very different stages of life, but just talk about that a little bit. Remember the classic 5 OT game, the 2:35 a.m. ending that they were able to pull off the victory. The Flyers were, after a very, very long night, to tie up that series. Hopefully for the Flyers tonight, they're not looking at a tie coming back to Philly. They're looking at taking a 2-0 lead back home. But what were your thoughts? Just what do you remember from that awesome game? Because it just speaks to the history between these 2 teams.
Yeah, you mentioned it's cool that the last time they had a home playoff game in front of fans was 8 years ago. It was the Penguins. Penguins beat them 8-5. Guy scored 4 straight goals for them, including a hat trick in the third period alone. So Flyers fans are going to be riled up on Wednesday night. And, you know, there's a lot of the same guys. Like we talked about the youth infusion, but Crosby scored in that game. Couturier scored in that game. You know, there's going to be a lot of same people. So that's going to be awesome. But throwing it all the way back to, was that 2000? That was my sophomore year in college. I went to Penn State. So, you know, a lot of Philly people, a lot of Pittsburgh people. And it was so cool because it was really nice out. It was exam week. I was done exams early in the week, so I was like free. my friends, I think, had their last exam, or the guys I hung with the most had their last exams that day. So they came home, weather was beautiful. We were outside having drinks, having a good time. That game was so awesome and lasted so long that some of my friends went to sleep after, hanging out all day. And one of them woke back up and the game was still on. Now, it's a shame because he's a Penguins fan that he woke up to what he woke up to. But that's always going to stand out. But this is an awesome rivalry. And it seems legitimately that the players on the teams feel it too. It's not just a fan thing and, we're from the same state. I think these guys really go at each other, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I don't remember what year it was, but remember the Crosby thing? He was still pretty young at the time, I believe, but they were getting ready to face off in the playoffs, and a reporter asked him, what don't you like about the Flyers? And he was like, I hate them. I hate that whole team. He's like, yeah, but what is your problem with them specifically? And he's like, I hate the whole team, everybody. just already had an X on his back because everybody, for whatever reason, hates on the young hyped prospect, no matter what city they play for. But your cross-state rival gets this kid. He looks every bit of the superstar that people thought he was going to be, and then he says, I hate that entire team. Man, Flyers fans have held it against that dude since that day. The 5-0 game you mentioned in college and having drinks and a beautiful day. I was in 6th grade that day. Dad let me stay up late. The deal that we made, I think when it got to around midnight, was don't give me any crap tomorrow when I wake you up for school. You're still going to school tomorrow, but you can stay up as late as you want because this is awesome. I'm pretty sure he also fell asleep on the couch and woke up with a couple OTs left. I was dozing off on the floor, but just incredible game and a nice little walk down memory lane as we prepare for game 2 tonight.
Yeah. There's a lot of history, and tonight they're going to be even more riled up in Pittsburgh tonight after losing in game 1. So expect some real intensity, and then more of the same for game 3 when we're back in Philly.
Yeah, the last thing that the Penguins want, I know that none of the players will say this, but I would imagine the last thing they want to do is go into Philly with this fan base starved for revenge from 2018, down 2-0. So
yeah,
Flyers were able to set the tone and match, if not exceed, the intensity of the Penguins. I mean, they out-hit them. Couturier was just mauling people. Travis Sanheim was mauling people. But the big thing for me was how strong the defense was, right? They had a lot of surprisingly good opportunities to score in those first 2 periods and only got 1 goal in the net. And a lot of times, especially with a younger team, you can find yourself back on your heels, feel the pressure. We're not getting it done. We can't get it. And these guys stayed focused, and they shut down, for the most part, the 3rd-ranked offense in the NHL in the Penguins. So, again, they got a late one to make it interesting, but with a minute left in the game, a nice save from Vladar to keep it at the 1-goal lead. But they set an intensity that I think is going to be ratcheted up again. And I think the key is going to be that the Flyers did a good bit of poking and prodding to force the Penguins into some mistakes and some penalties. I think that the refs are going to be a little more aware of that. So you have to stay within yourself and don't let that get out of control. But it worked in game 1, and it'll be interesting to see how it works in game 2.
Yeah, can't wait. And I'm all in on this, man. I didn't realize, because it's not like my top sport, but it makes sense why I haven't been more into it recently. They've been struggling, and that rebuild has taken a while, but it looks like it's here. And it would be awesome if it's accelerated, if these young guys can lead them and advance in round 2 and see, it's all about matchups. I don't know who it would be, but it's fun to be a part of right now, especially with the other stuff we're going to talk about. The other 2 teams who are in action are struggling a little bit right now. So this is great and great to have, and I can't wait for tonight and the rest of the series.
Well, my prediction for tonight, we get another Marty party. I'm going another goal for Martone. What do you think about tonight's game?
I love it. I love that. Just Vladar's been great, and he ended up 3rd they were kind of splitting time with the goalies, but he ended up 3rd in the league in goals against average. And I don't think the Flyers allow that many shots. So defensively, they're playing great, and they've got a goalie to back it up. And with the firepower that Martone brings, I'm not gonna. It's hard to predict to win. I mean, I'm
agreed.
Yeah, like I'm jazzed up. Like they got me believing after game 1. But you always say you're happy to go home. If you steal one of the first 2 games in the road, like they've already got what you want. So tonight is kind of gravy. And yeah, I say they take it to them and see what happens.
Yeah, I expect another physical game. I expect it to be close. I don't know if I can pick a win, like you said. I mean, the fan in me wants to shout from the rooftops they're coming back to Philly 2-0, but in an attempt to stay as neutral as possible, I'm just going to not choose a winner and just say it's going to be a fun watch. How about that?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, that is probably the most excitement that you're going to hear for the rest of the pod. Unfortunately, I hope you don't tune the dial as a result, but unfortunately for Philly sports, there's not a ton of positivity right now beyond what the Flyers are bringing to the table. Before we get to the other team that's in the playoffs, we're going to take a little pit stop here and talk about the baseball team. The Phillies currently 8-13, losers of 5 straight, and now they're heading on the road trying to get things together. Usually coming home is a little bit of the medicine that the doctor ordered, for lack of a better phrase, and instead they had a terrible home stand and find themselves reeling. And it's really a situation where the answers from the manager, which are typically, oh, it's early, or hey, these guys are good and they're going to be fine. He is starting to be a little bit more frustrated. The players are being a little more honest about their frustration mounting. And it is a tough situation to be in when the Braves look as good as they do. And you have this big of a payroll. So Johnny, they're hitting the road. They're going to be in Chicago tonight. Just what are some of your early thoughts before we get into the hard-hitting topics for the Phillies?
Well, you mentioned it, 8-13. They're last in the division. They've lost 5 straight, getting swept by a team in their division at home, and they have the worst run differential in baseball. And we're not just cherry picking here. Like, obviously, they've won some games, and if you sort by, they've got a better record than some of the teams that are ahead of them there. But it's usually more indicative of future performance, and they are the worst team in run differential in Major League Baseball, which, I mean, that's all it comes down to. There's 1,000 stats in baseball, right? And I love them all, and you can find all these different things that lead to all these things, but you have to outscore a team to win a game, and they are literally the worst at doing it. And you mentioned the teams that they just went 5-1 or 1-5 against at home. They're going back and playing the Cubs and the Braves, who are number 1 and number 3 in baseball in run differential. Now, some of that has been built up on steamrolling the Phillies last week, but that's how it went down, right? I mean, there's a reason for it. So we'll get into some details. I will say I'm skeptical that anything's going to look that different. I'm not saying they're going to go 1-5 again, or 1-6. They got a 4-game set at Wrigley and then 3 more in Atlanta. But as we're going to get into, I don't like what I'm seeing, and I think there's some things that are real issues, and we're going to play a game after we break some of this down and talk about what's real and what's not. But I think there's a lot to not like right now, and a lot of it concerns me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, the run differential is tough. I think that I would feel a lot better about the run differential if the runs against wasn't so high, even though I do think that is the thing that's going to likely change the quickest. I think that their pitching, they're just built on that. And these guys have long track records. Maybe Luzardo, maybe not as long, but they have long track records of being good. And they have Zack Wheeler returning, and that bullpen, when it's healthy, should be lights out. But let's go through. You talked about the run differential, but they've allowed the 3rd most runs in the majors. It's the Astros at 140, the Nationals at 134, who have also scored over 100 runs, and then the Phillies and White Sox tied at 113. You're in the same realm as those teams, the Cardinals and the Athletics, for letting up 110 or more runs. And for a team that's supposed to be built on their pitching, especially their starting pitching, to see that struggle this early, to me, that's the most alarming. We talked about the Mets, and of course, the Mets have lost 11 in a row and might be the only team worse than them at the moment, but they have almost scored the same amount of runs as the Phillies, and their starting pitching has done a better job. Their their pitching overall has only allowed 97 runs, and they've only scored 3 less runs than the Phillies. So you can go LOL Mets, but the Phillies are right there with them, and their pitching isn't doing as much to keep them in games.
Yeah. That doesn't look good when you're tied with the White Sox for runs allowed.
No, not at all.
Then let's dig into it. Let's identify some of the problems, right? Like we've laid it out. They're last in the division. They're on a 5-game losing streak, and they've got a really tough road trip staring them in the face. So let me start. I'll throw out a problem, and then we can try to break it down. The thing I've seen that has stood out to me is they're two, let's call it hit or miss. All their runs seem to come in one inning. And of course, sometimes I like looking into that stuff because it's easy to remember or, overinflate your ideas about certain things. But this was even a couple of weeks ago, the first time I looked at it, because they had a couple of those slow starts and then a fifth or sixth inning explosion. I mean, things have gone a little bit differently, which we'll break down shortly. But so I managed to look it up. They have scored runs in 39 different innings. So, even if you scored 10 runs in an inning, that's still just one inning where you're scoring. And not saying, of course, 10 runs is great. So it's not all about. But to me, it shows the ability to continually pile on inning after inning, or continuous another time through the lineup, up and down the lineup. They're two hit or miss. They've scored runs in 39 different innings, which is the fewest of any team in baseball. So I can't do the math that quickly. I mean, they've played, 8 and 13. So they've played 21 games. Yeah. It's 180 innings, whatever that is. That, just the percentage. It seems like when they score, and I won't even say they score in bunches. I don't think there's a lot of 5 or 6 run innings that stand out to me. It could be a hit here, a hit there, a 2-run home run. And we saw it last night, the 2-run homer in the first inning. You're like, wow, this is going to be awesome. That was it. Same thing happened the night before with Reyes, who was called up. So that to me is the biggest thing. And it's going to lead into something else I'm going to talk about. But like I mentioned, if you can go through the lineup and continually put pressure on the opposing pitchers, on the other team's defense, and keep that going and really put pressure on it and plate runs, even at one here, one there, whatever, it seems like they've got a little bit of an explosion, and that's it in so many of these games. And that's the way it feels, and these numbers back it up. So for reference, the Dodgers lead the league. They've scored in 67 different innings, close to twice as often, and the Phillies are last.
Yeah, not good. One thing to add to this, I saw a note from Corey Seidman over at PHLY on Twitter that kind of added to this. I know that you brought this topic up, but Phillies scored 10 runs at Coors Field on April 3rd. Then they were held scoreless in 63 of the next 71 innings. They scored 13 runs Monday to beat the Cubs, then scored in 6 of the remaining 45 innings in the homestand. It's nearly 90% of innings over the last 2 weeks they've been held scoreless. Yeah. And then 2 massive explosions with a 10 and a 13 run.
And even what Corey says there, I mean, if I remember correctly, that 10-run game in Colorado was 7-0 in the first inning, right?
Right. So yeah, they put up 7 in the first.
Right. That's 70% of the runs being scored in one inning in that game. And then I'm pulling up the box score here. They did a better job in that 13-run game with the Cubs. 1 in the first, 1 in the second, 2 in the third. They still had a 5-run fifth, but they scored in 6 different innings in that game. So a little bit more of what we're looking for. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, I think even since the first inning in Colorado, those numbers would be even higher.
Yeah, it's tough sledding right now, and some of these guys are much better hitters than they've shown so far. Some guys, Adolis Garcia is seeing a ton of pitches, and despite how his numbers the last 2 seasons have been, he actually looks like has a much better approach at the plate. He's gotten a little bit unlucky. We normally talk about regression to the mean when people are off to really hot starts. We're going to see a progression to the mean, right? These guys are Alec Boehm, Brandon Marsh, Bryson Stott. They might not be perennial all-stars like people thought they might be, but they are better hitters than they're showing thus far this season. And I think you're going to see that normalize. But the big part, and this is to set up the second topic, John, is that it seems like they have one pocket of the lineup that can generate anything. And that's about it. And it's at the top. It's those first 3 guys.
Yes, they are last in the majors in OPS from spots 4 through 9 in the order. So once you get through Turner, Harper, and Schwarber, and Schwarber and Harper are propping up a little bit with Turner, the top 3 portion, but they are the bottom, dead last in OPS from 4 through 9 in the major leagues. And that's affected the whole thing. Last season, we know there's a lot of games left for this stuff to normalize, but last season they were 4th in the league in on-base slugging and OPS. This year, right now, 25th in on-base, 21st in slugging, 23rd in OPS. you've got your top guys playing really well and nobody else is doing anything. I did another kind of a breakdown. They got 4 players on the team with an OPS plus over 100. Schwarber, yep. Harper, yep. JT, cool. A little bit of improvement early on, especially at that position, be over 100. And Justin Crawford has been a really nice surprise early on. Sosa and Marsh are in the 90s, which I think is kind of right around we'd expect. Trey Turner's 86. I'd like to think he'll be better, but I don't think whatever the numbers have been, he doesn't look good to me swinging. He doesn't look confident, or I don't know. I don't want to say it's guessing, or he's swinging for
crossed up a lot.
Yeah. Adolis Garcia is at 79. For reference, Castellanos was an 87 OPS plus last year. So there's the 10 extra million to take a step back. And then you get into really the part that makes you want to hide your eyes. Bryson Stott's OPS plus is 42.
I don't think I've seen a OPS plus that low, John.
No, he's 6 for 35 in his last 9 games, 6 for 35. That's a 171 batting average and a 437 OPS. And then Alec Boehm has an OPS plus of 13. 13.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't know that number went that low.
Yeah, it's definitely a small sample thing.
Right.
He's not going to play all year and be that low. It's just almost impossible. He's slugging 194. He has 1 extra base hit since opening day when he homered, and he's 2 for 33 in his past 10 games, batting .061 with a 172 OPS and no extra base hits. And those are the guys, which we don't have to get back into, but those are the guys that with the Phillies getting close with Bo Bichette in the offseason, it was going to be one of those 2 guys who's placed in the lineup he took, right? So we knew there was some stuff, and who knows how that affected them. I also, it's easy for me to sit here and read off stats, but I can also recognize that this is a really tough game, and for guys who are feeling the pressure, I don't know how much that has to do with it. But whether it does or doesn't, these are the results, and it's leading to a team that's last in the majors in run differential. And then I got into the bench players. They have 3 bench players with a negative OPS plus. One of them's already been sent to the minors, Dylan Moore and Rafael Marchand. And we know the way the team's set up. Marchand, as much as we love him, the design is not for him to be playing that often. Real Muto, that's why they brought him back. So to just list through that and go through it, it's I don't know. What's your reaction to some of that stuff? I know I told you some of it, but like there's some surprises in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, you knew that Boehm was struggling, and we're not going to get into the details, but he's dealing with a lot of personal stuff off the field, and obviously, like whether you say it is or not, that's obviously a distraction. It has to be, and he's shown to be a guy who will wear his emotion on his sleeve at times, even if he's shown an ability as he got older to bounce back quickly. But this is a different situation, man, and those numbers are still surprising to see how low they are, but. Yeah. When you watch him day in and day out, something does not seem right. And even more so, we're talking about Turner, who's an elite hitter, led the league in hitting last year, looking a little off. But this is he looks like his mind is somewhere else when he's in the batter's box. The one thing I will say is that I do like how focused he seems to be remaining. He has seemed to remain in the field. Boehm never known as the slickest fielder, but to see him kind of still make the plays and not get in his own head that way at third base is huge, especially if they're not going to have, one of the options that they had to replace him over at third base was Kemp, and he got sent down. Sosa, he's more than likely only going to play against lefties. I mean, he'll have an appearance here and there against the righty, and then the question is, who does he go in for, right? Alec or Bryson? And Alec might just need a couple days down, a couple days away, maybe. I know that they're not in the business of just letting a dude walk away, but for extenuating circumstances, I don't know what he needs, but some of these numbers are really surprising. And more, like you say, he's Kemp, we talked about him, Marchand, we talked about him more. He's more there because they don't have a whole lot of options defensively in center field, and he can play everywhere. I mean, up until this weekend, he faced more batters as a pitcher than he's faced pitchers as a hitter. I mean, it's really just a really weird start to the season for him. And again, I know it's early, but 21 games feels like a decent sample size to really start evaluating some of these things.
Yeah, and to be clear, you're right about Boehm and the stuff he's dealing with, and whatever it is, like there's other things that go into it. This is not a complete like, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is the only thing it's going to be, or this is all these guys are made of.
Right.
But right now, it's a lot of the reason why they are at the bottom of the NL East, even behind a team on an 11-game losing streak. And we'll get to them in a fun new segment we created for today's show.
Yeah.
But let me give you one more thing to tie those two things together. So the not scoring in a bunch of different innings, and then the top heavy nature of the lineup. So they're tied for second in the league in runs scored in the first inning, when we know Turner, Harper, and Schwarber are going to bat, right? So I was looking through the rest of it. They seem to have a bunch of like big scoring explosions in the fifth inning, and I thought that was just kind of random. Could have just been whoever they faced that day, whatever. But the three guys who have the most plate appearances for them in the fifth inning this year are Turner, Schwarber, and Harper. So the way the lineup kind of falls, they're coming up the third time a lot in the fifth inning. So and the Phillies have scored a bunch of runs there. So if you take out the first, which obviously makes sense, and then, this is a strange cherry pick. Like, this is not a real stat, obviously, but if you take out the first thing when you know they're batting and the fifth thing where they're batting a lot, the Phillies are tied for last in the major leagues in runs scored in every inning but the first and the fifth with the Mets. Wow. So your top three guys are batting in the first. They keep coming up a lot in the fifth. Every other inning tied for last in scoring. So this is, unless they change the batting order, like, I don't want to say drastically, but move one of those guys to a different spot, unless somebody starts batting fourth or fifth or ninth to come back around or something like that. Until these guys until the other guys start improving and whatever they need to do that, whether it's performance related, off the field, whatever it is, they've got to get improved performance from 2/3 of the lineup for this to change. And I'm curious to see how that's going to happen.
Right. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I feel like it opens the door. They don't have a lot of options to turn to, right? I mean, are you going to give Dylan Moore more at bats? I loved your tweet. It's like the backup out of position platoon left fielder was not the problem.
Yes.
Right. Like Kemp being sent down for Reyes, who's also playing out of position in the outfield, isn't going to be the solution for the rest of the lineup. Now, the one thing that I did like, and I want to get your opinion on this, that's why I brought it up, is there's not a whole lot of guys who you have the option to like tell them that they're going to lose playing time or lose their job. In theory, anybody could, right? But like, You're pretty entrenched with Harper and Real Muto and Turner and Schwarber, and you don't have a whole lot of options in the outfield. So Marsh is going to see plenty of play, and Garcia is going to see plenty of play. They want Justin Crawford to play, but like, this feels like a message. Like, you have to start somewhere when you send messages, and it's the last guy on the bench, but is this the beginning of a message? Like, any of you can lose your job at any time. See, look, a guy already lost his job. Right? Yeah, is that kind of what now? Obviously, they're going to phrase it to the public as, well, Kemp, he's been struggling a little bit. He has the option. We're going to go down there, let him play left field every day and get used to those bats again. But really, it feels like we needed to do something to spark. And guess what, guys? It starts with Kemp, but we can keep making moves if we need to, even if there's not a clear picture of who they would turn to next.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the intent behind it. I mean, it also seems like for a guy who you're not asking to do too much and hasn't performed, like, you might as well just give someone else a shot like that. To go along with what you said about what I tweeted. Yeah, you're not going to see that. You shouldn't see this guy that much, and you take a flyer on someone else. Like, could it be any worse? The guy, Kemp, unfortunately, was 2 for 20 with no extra base hits. So, if Reyes comes up and does that, you haven't lost anything. And the thing he does is go yard his first time up, and he's a big dude.
Yes, he is.
Do whatever you want in left field if you could do that every couple nights. So, I'm not sure if that's the intent behind it, but I would think. There's certain guys with track record, and especially with the manager and the way he looks at veterans. I think there's certain guys who, if they're going through a tough patch, are not going to come out of the lineup. But I would hope that everyone in the organization is brainstorming ways to improve at any spot where they can improve. And whatever that means, sending someone down, acquiring whatever it is, moving positions, shuffling things. We talked before about where Aiden Miller could fit, and it's not just about him. I know he's getting back slowly, but, they were willing to be creative with Bichette to bring him in. I'd hope that if the options, you look at your best options and don't look at it by position, like, they may have to be creative, and we may have to live with, someone playing out of position, out of their comfort zone or something. But in my opinion, that's And in my belief, that's what they're doing. I would hope that's what they're doing as an organization.
Yeah, we mentioned Miller as a possibility as a guy who could crack the major league roster depending on how guys are playing. But unfortunately for the Phillies, he has not yet started swinging a bat. He dealt with some lower back issues in spring training, and he's just now starting to get back on the field and do some grounder work. They do feel like that is a big stride for him. They hope that he'll take some swings this week and see how he feels. But if he had gotten in the lineup right away and started hot, maybe you see him called up already instead of Reyes, and you just figure it out between second and third base. But that has not been an option. So they are really limited on the moves that they can make. And again, without a guy like him back there ready to go, you're going to plug and play and hope that it causes some sort of spark. And if there is an underlying message that, hey, Kemp was the first guy, Moore or Garcia or whoever else, you're next. If some stuff doesn't turn around, don't mean to call out anybody by name, but it's a tough start to the season. I did like on Phillies Therapy, Matt Gelb said an unnamed player liked to remind him after the game, obviously after discussing frustrations, that look, the deepest runs we had were the 2 years we started off the worst. He's like, So we're trying to look at anything we can positively. They were 25 and 32 to start the year in 2023, where they were went away from the World Series. They were 22 and 29 when Girardi got fired in 2022, and they ended up making it to the World Series. So again, re-emphasizing it is a small sample and still early, but we'll talk about what we think is too early and what is a long-term concern. One of the concerns for me, John, has been this is a team that in years past, the talk has been they've struggled with breaking pitches, and especially Bryce Harper. There's a lot of talk about that, really just struggling with the off speed. Schwarber, a huge improvement against off speed pitches last year, but they have not hit the fastball like we're used to seeing from this team in the early going, up and down the lineup.
Keep going. I'm gonna turn my light on while because this is your.
Got it.
So I'm gonna turn my because the sun keeps going behind the clouds, but you go and let's hear it.
For the audio audience, we'll figure out a way to ignore that. Anyway, they're hitting 251 against fastballs in the early going, and that is not good for a team that is built on fastballs. This note is from the Phillies show, and Todd Zalecki. He only included fastballs and two-seamer sinkers in there, didn't include cutters just because guys have so much variance in that pitch. But in the last 4 seasons, rather, they've hit 271 or better in each of those seasons. And in 3 of those 4 seasons, they ranked in the top 5 in Major League Baseball. 270, I think there was one season where they were ranked around 12th, despite hitting 274, just because the league had a really good year hitting fastballs. But that's 4 seasons in a row, overall hitting over 271, and then a 20-point dip that's 18th in the majors is a noticeable difference for this team. And to add to it, they have a 382 slugging percentage against 4-seamers and 2-seamers. That's 24th in baseball. So they're not putting the ball in play at a decent rate, and when they do, they're not hitting the ball hard against the most common pitch. And if this is a team that continues to struggle against breaking pitches, if they can't even hit the fastball, we're in for a very long summer. Last year, they were 7th in the league in slugging percentage with a 467 against fastballs, and they are just struggling out of the gate to get this done. It's for a team that, like, you always knew, hey, if they're patient and they wait for their fastball, they can do damage. To not hit the fastball in the early going is just adding to the offensive struggles and adding to what this team is just lacking outright. And I don't know how much of a concern it is, but for the 20-point dip in average is one thing, the 80-point dip in slugging percentage is even more, John. So I don't know how you feel about watching them with fastballs, but they're not hitting ones that they shouldn't. For some odd reason, it feels like they're taking a lot of fastballs. I don't have numbers on that, but it feels like they're taking a lot of fastballs in the strike zone instead of attacking those pitches like you've seen in years past.
Well, you gave me a lot of ideas for things to look up after laying all that out.
Keep your eyes on socials. We'll tweet it all out.
But you're right. And my reaction to that was it's one thing is about the batting average, but if you're not doing damage against them either, then you're really going to put yourself in a bind. And I would even say, regardless of what they had done previously and where they ranked, we see a lot more breaking balls and other pitches. Pitchers have these broader repertoires, but everything's still based off the fastball. And I think if you're not going to be able to do damage against fastballs, you're really putting yourself in a tough spot unless you're going to be otherworldly against everything else. So Yeah, that's not a good sign for a team that doesn't seem to have depth in the lineup. If they're not hitting it's the pitch that people use, and we're talking about the increased velocity every year. It's getting harder and harder to hit, but it's still oftentimes you put up the best numbers against those because breaking balls are getting so much better also, and that's what pitchers use to get outs. And if the Phillies aren't doing that, it's going to be there's going to have to be a lot of things to change, I think, to get these results looking different.
Yeah, and like we said, it's the offense is, I think we expected some of the offense to be imperfect. We talked about in our preseason preview about there's some question marks about how good these positions will be year long. And, you have two guys that are essentially in platoons going in, a guy who they're looking to be a rebound candidate and a rookie all in the lineup. There's going to be some up and down portions, but I think it's a little bit worse than anybody expected. And the hope for the last couple years has been that the starting pitching would always bail them out. And so far this season, basically outside of one guy in Christopher Sanchez, they're not really living up to the billing. And yes, Zack Wheeler's out and you have a rookie in Andrew Painter, but it has looked bad. And newly extended Jesus Luzardo, his struggles have been to me almost inexplainable. I don't know. I haven't done a deep dive. I do know that he is being hit harder than he was last season. The Taiwan Walker, he did such a good job in a swingman role for them last season. He has looked very bad to start the year. I think his ERA is over 9 in the first inning. It's insane.
24.75.
24.75. 11.25 in the second inning. They're trying to figure out what to do with him. In his last start, they decided to not go with an opener. They decided to ramp up the intensity in the bullpen before he came out, thinking like, all right, if he's simulating that first inning in the pen, maybe he's coming in a little more relaxed. It didn't work. They did say that they're going to go with an opener the next time in. I think we all know, even though Rob shot me down when I asked this, he's eventually going to move back to the bullpen unless a roster change happens. When Wheeler comes back and they go back to a 5-man, maybe they go for a 6-man for a little bit because they have 13 games in 13 days. But Zack Wheeler's coming back, so maybe that helps solidify some things. He's been around the club, but it might be a stabilizing force if he's able to come back and they can pick his brain day in and day out, hour in and hour out. I don't know, but he didn't look good in his last rehab start. Luzardo has looked really bad. Nola's been solid. Sanchez has not looked the same, but he still has put up elite numbers. He's the one guy who's really been able to battle through not looking right all the time. And then Andrew Painter, I mean, he's dealt with what rookies deal with. He had some struggles in the cold. He now has a migraine. Now we are aware that he has a migraine issue. He's had the migraine issue. Looked great and battling through, coming in relief in that start, but then a ton of pitches, only gets through 4 innings this past Sunday. And the strongest part of this team all of a sudden feels like it has a lot of question marks.
Yeah. I have a question for you. Why is the assumption that if we were to come back and he takes obviously Walker's spot, why would you put Walker in the bullpen?
Because that's what he did last season, and he was really good at it last season. I think that was the plan coming into this year, was he was going to be the 6th guy, whether it's a spot starter or a swing man or their long man. And I don't know what the alternative is. I assume that they extend Luzardo to keep him in the rotation. I assume that they're not going to send down Andrew. So it's a lot of assumptions on my end, but
no, I don't mean you. I think everybody, like my choice would be when is Walker going to pitch? If he's got a 9 ERA and it's 24 something in the first inning he appears in a game, you want him? When do you want him coming in? I'd rather him, like, we know he's going to be like an emergency case, right? I'd rather have him down in AAA working on his first inning and stretched out throwing 80, 90 pitches a game. I don't see a spot for him in the bullpen.
Well, the thing is, he can shoot that down, and they want to keep as many assets as they have. He's a veteran of enough years where if they choose to DFA him, he can just say no thanks, collect his $18 million and walk away. So I think in an effort to keep him, he would be moved to the bullpen, and especially because they do have a lot of guys with options in the bullpen, which is something they haven't had in the last few years. So you have an option to move him back there. And he excelled at it last year. He's a great teammate from all things. I know that shouldn't matter, but when you combine Rob Thompson will say that roster decisions and payroll don't necessarily go hand in hand, but we know from experience that they do. And Walker is a guy who they like his leadership. And I think that he's going to stick around unless something happens later in the season where they just decide enough is enough and they're going to eat whatever money is remaining.
Yeah, and I do too. I like what he's provided overall, especially in certain spurts. I mean, I'm looking at his numbers right now. 4.38 ERA his first year, 7.10 his second year, 4.08 last year, in a combination of relief appearances and starts. And it's early, but 9.16 right now. Yeah, that makes sense to me about having the options if he just says, sayonara if they want to send him down. But I like what you said about 13 games in 13 days. I think I'd maybe stretch that out a little bit. But like my thought has always been, I can't imagine if he's struggling the way he is right now, if you put him in the bullpen, like I can't think of a time where I'm thinking, okay, let's bring in Walker,
Right.
And I say again, I really do respect what the guy has done, and I think he was really big for them last year down the stretch. But yeah, I don't know. To me, that's my question is like, if he's going to pitch like this, I don't see how or when you use a guy like that.
Right, and you're not wrong, but I think if you that maybe this is wishful thinking, but a 3.15 ERA, now a almost 2-run higher WHIP out of the pen last year, but you kind of limit the repertoire and just dominate the usage of that splitter and hope that you can get some swing and miss on it. 3.15 ERA, even if the advanced numbers don't necessarily match up with it, is still an impressive number back there, and they want to keep a guy around. Again, the alternative is you go to Alan Ronhell, and then you're kind of out from there. I mean, I don't know who else is ready to go at the major league level, or even at the AAA level, who could potentially come in and make an impact. So he probably sticks around, but it's in what role? And like you said, it's a matter of how long are they willing to accept this if this is the result the whole way.
Yeah, his ERA is 4.91 after the first inning, and he's got twice as many strikeouts as walks. So it just stinks that like even in the bullpen, you have to get him through that first inning to get to that performance. So that, like, to me, I'd be trying to figure that out. And again, I guess if he says no, I'm not going, but it does seem like there's a way to try to work on something there. That's what I would be hopeful about, but who knows?
Yeah, maybe he's willing to accept because he's like, do I want to change teams right now? This team still has potential, and I can be a part of it if I go down and work on what needs to be worked on. But I could easily see him and his agent agreeing, hey, let's move on, and we can sign a deal somewhere else, and you're getting paid the same amount of money either way, man. So
yeah,
that's the curse of the guaranteed deal in baseball. So
for sure. You have more on the pitching, or do you want to get to our brand new game?
Nah, I think we can go into the game. I'll give a little note there, but real quick, what were your thoughts on Zack Wheeler? Are you concerned about that last start, his velocity being a little down? He was only hitting like 90, 92. It was a cold day, but any concern there coming in?
I'm not concerned right now because for a couple of reasons. I assume he's still ramping up, and I also think he's a guy that can pitch effectively when his stuff is diminished a bit. So I'm not concerned right now, but I guess to me, I've got to see it in the majors and see it for a couple of starts and know if this is the new version of Zack Wheeler, and then how does he pitch with that, or if this is still early on getting back from this very strange injury and it's going to take some time to get back to being quote unquote himself.
Right. And the one nice thing before we go into the game is there are guys in the organization who have gone through the exact same thing that he did. He's going to come back to the majors and be able to rely on a guy like Brad Keller, who came back and was very effective as a starter before moving to the bullpen after that surgery. So obviously health is number one thing. You hope that he's in a good spot health-wise. It looks like he is, and he should be rejoining the team during this road trip. They haven't announced an official day, but he is with the team, travel with them to Chicago.
Cool.
But time for our brand new game. Okay, it's time for our new game. Is it early or is it broken? A new segment here, probably a one-time segment, hopefully a one-time segment on the Brotherly Glove podcast. Is it early or is it broken? So we broke down 4 of the things that we feel are plaguing this team. And Johnny, I'm going to ask you and you can ask me. We'll go every other. I'll start it off. So let's go with our first topic. They're 2 hit or miss. All their runs seem to come in 1 inning. They've gone scoreless for almost 90% of innings over the last 2 weeks. So Johnny, is it early or is it broken?
I want to say it's early because that seems like just a weird anomaly kind of thing, but I'm gonna tie it to the lineup being too top heavy and that stuff. And I'm closer to it being broken. And I know we don't think Alec Boehm's season-ending OPS plus is going to be 13, and we don't think Bryson Stott's OPS plus at the end of the year is going to be 42. But people that I thought were going to struggle are struggling, and I think we talked about it last year. It's really easy. I think everybody can recite it in their sleep now that this is a 96-win team coming off a division championship. We were right. But you and I also said, not even in the offseason, we were saying down the stretch before the playoffs last year that this is a team that's going to win the division and increase its win total for the however many straight years. And it still seems like they've got a lot of things that need fixing. And I don't feel any differently about that. And some of these guys have played, like, again, I don't think this is what you're going to see at the end of the year. But I don't know. I mean, when I laid out go down the OPS plus and the rankings on the team, not much of that is a surprise to me other than the astronomically low numbers from Stott and Boehm. Schwarber and Harper, and honestly, the thing, and I don't want to get too into it yet because it's still early, but I think Justin Crawford's results paired with some of the underlying stuff you're seeing about how hard he hits the ball, like those don't match up. And if I had to place a bet on that, I would place a bet that his numbers are going to be the results numbers are going to be more in line with how not hard he's hitting the ball. So I would expect that he's not going to be one of the top 4 guys on the team in OPS plus. Now, if that's because one of these guys, if Turner heats up or Garcia heats up and passes him, that's great. But you've got guys down, and I think Crawford's playing above his batted ball profile right now. So I guess there's no leaning, right? The game is just one or the other. I'm worried this is broken. I don't know how they fix this in season unless Boehm gets the monkey off his back or Topper has some magic lineup to deploy, or one of these guys just heats up when the weather gets hot. Or Aiden Miller comes. I don't know what the real choices are, and I don't see one of those being an elixir either. So I'm concerned that my answer is I think they're broken.
Ooh, not a great start for the fans out there for the first game, but Johnny going with it's broken. I'm going to combine the first 2 as well because they just tie right directly into each other. And I'm going to go with it's early. I think that those numbers are alarming, right? 13 and 42 OPS pluses. If they progress to the mean, as we mentioned earlier, people like to say regress, even though it's the opposite direction, progress to the mean. I think that I don't expect Crawford and JT to be over 100 all season, but if they settle somewhere in the 90s, I think that Marsh and Turner and Garcia and Stott and Boehm all have potential to be 80 to 110 in that area. I mean, you're talking about guys who have done it year in and year out, and hope maybe somebody else has to come in and give them a spark. But I think that even if you see 2 guys fall off of that list, you're going to see other people rebound in a big way. So I'm holding out hope. I'm committing to it is early, not broken.
All right. You brought up that they're struggling against fastballs. You think it's early, or you think that's broken?
I hate to do this, but I'm going to double up. I'm going with it's early. I think that this team is the last time that the World Baseball Classic came around, they didn't get to spend as much time as a team. Although they did hit 271 against fastballs, it was also the year where they ranked in the middle of the pack against fastballs by the end of the season. And I think that whether we think this is an acceptable excuse or not, some of these guys they almost feel like this is spring training for them. They don't play a whole lot in spring training. That's kind of just what this team does to keep themselves healthy by the end of the season. I have a feeling that while their struggles against off-speed pitches may not greatly improve, I expect them to come back in a big way as the months get hot. These bats normally do against the fastball.
I'm going to go with it's early. I don't think this is a team that forgot how to hit fastballs. I think it's all kind of related, but I also think that's much more of an early season thing and a small sample size thing. Question on something you just mentioned, though. If it's kind of spring training for the World Baseball Classic guys, wasn't it supposed to be the opposite? That they're ramped up in competition readiness in the middle of March?
I agree, but after the last World Baseball Classic, when half the team was gone, we saw a similar slow start. So I'm connecting the two, whether it's true or not. I agree that it should have been like that, but we saw I think Topper's put it this way in the past, like there is after big high intensity moments, there's an emotional dump, and then you have to recover from that. So to have a few weeks of high intensity, high emotion, and then go back to a normal spring training setting where you're supposed to be tinkering and working on things, it's going to take a little bit longer to ramp up. So I am maybe with the fingers crossed. I'm going with it's early on that.
All right. Yeah. And I wasn't questioning you. That's all you hear is how, hey, these guys are going to be in like championship form on St. Patty's Day because of all this, the great tournament and all this stuff. And, if the response is, now we're going to get ramped up. I thought that was the benefit to it. So, but you're looking at what you saw before. That's smart. And then, all right, the last one. So we're both it's early there. Yeah. And the last one is the starting pitching troubles they've had so far. Are you slow down, it's early, or hold up, it's broken?
I am because I have to commit to one answer. I'm going to say hold up, it's early, but I think that there are some broken pieces in there.
Which ones?
Taijuan Walker. I just don't know what's going to happen there. Right? It's a big question mark. He didn't respond well to moving to the bullpen 2 years ago when he really struggled as a starter. I don't know what the problem is, but they need to figure some things out quick with him. Zack Wheeler.
Last year he did, right? And you mentioned before about how everybody talks about him being such a great teammate. It seemed like an improvement he had to make and he wanted to make, and he did. And so I think if he's going to bounce around and just kind of, do whatever the team needs, I think he's much more equipped to do that this year. So I'm a little, despite me asking why would you put him in the bullpen if he's pitching to a 9 ERA, if he's going to be out there, I think he's a guy who's going to try to grind through some stuff. And I think I really like him, and I think that struggle going to the bullpen was an old thing that he worked through.
Well, I'll say it's early with cracks. There's Walker, and what do you do there? Jesus Luzardo just signs the big extension. I don't think that has anything to do with it, but you're in the early season, early parts of that massive extension and locking up some more of the payroll. And they said they dove in and he's not tipping. And that was the issue that they identified last season. So what is the answer there? He's a guy who has obviously shown Cy Young flashes on one end, but when it gets bad, it can get really ugly fast. And despite all the potential, 2 other franchises who need starting pitching even more than the Phillies were willing to move on from him. So it's what maybe did they not see, or what did they unlock that who knows if it's temporary or long-term. So that's a concern for me. The Wheeler stuff, we're going to see. I think he's just, every time you doubt the guy, he comes and proves why you shouldn't. But Nola has looked better than expected. Still early on him. That's why I'm saying still early, but there's cracks. And then with Painter, I mean, there's been some early season struggles. I think that he has the makeup to do well, but with the migraines and the early season struggles and the team not maybe flourishing the way that they could, there's all of a sudden a lot of pressure on the young kids. So I'm going to go early. John, your thoughts? Early, or are the starting pitching woes more broken than I think?
I'm still early. Early in the season. I think most of these guys have pitched to what I expected. Luzardo maybe a little not as good so far. I think he'll be better, but again, that's a 8 ERA in four games. Even a not great start will bring that down. So I'm not that concerned. I I think Nola's right where I thought he would be. I think Painter, he's a great prospect, but it's not going to be easy. And I've liked what I've seen from him. And the thing for me with Walker is obviously he's the next guy, and no team goes through a season, the same 5 starting pitchers. So I expect to see him out there. But like they have a 5.14 ERA with him. If you take him out of the equation, the other 4 guys have combined for a 4.32 ERA, and that would bump them from like 27th to 18th in the league. So my whole thing is about like Walker's just that's a placeholder, and everybody else, I think Luzardo is not going to have a 7.94 ERA all year. So whatever he's got to do when Wheeler gets back, I talked about it with a lot of stuff before when we did the previews. It's patience, and we have to have patience. I think we should recognize the alarms that are going off, but you still have to have patience because we're not even a quarter of the way through the season. But right. It's early on the starting pitching, and I like what I've seen for the most part.
Well, that was your first and potentially last edition of Is It Early or Is It Broken? We'll revisit in our next episode if nothing has changed. Maybe there's some other issues that rear their ugly head. But Phillies.
And then one more brand new game, and hopefully this is not the last time for this game. But right before we transition to our other playoff team, perhaps my favorite new game on the podcast is, but at least we're not the Mets.
Okay, give the people at least we're not the Mets.
The Mets have lost 11 straight games. They've scored 19 runs in those games. The Phillies, we mentioned, they have the worst run differential in the majors, but the Mets are last in the National League East, so they're still behind the Phillies. And honestly, that's all the detail you need. To me, the game is, hey, but at least we're not the Mets, and that's the headline, and that's the meat, and that's the closing line. We're not the Mets.
At least we're not the Mets. Well,
and that has been, but at least we're not the Mets.
Well, a little positivity on the way out. At least they're not the Mets. Well, you mentioned one other playoff team, and John, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about when it comes to the Sixers. It's exciting that they're in the playoffs. They had that great play-in game, exciting time down at the yard or whatever, I don't know, center. What do we call it? The stadium
center? I don't know.
It's the Xfinity Mobile Arena is what it's called now. There we go. They've made the playoffs in 8 of the last 9 years. They have some studs on the roster when healthy, but they haven't gotten out of the second round since 2001 when they went on a surprise run to the finals. So, and game 1 inspired no confidence. They looked ugly. They got dog walked from the jump. It was just, Jason Tatum looked every bit the superstar that he is, Achilles injury or not. He had a whole game worth of stats in the first half, 21 points, 8 boards, 4 assists. And the Celtics defense shut down a normally electric Sixers offense. They held them to under 40% shooting from the field, under 30% in the first half. The Sixers only shot 17.4% from beyond the arc. Just not the way you want to go into a game 1. I don't think there's any way that they look that bad shooting again. It seems almost improbable is the right word, but it seems almost impossible to shoot that poorly again. So just we can be quick on it. What was your thoughts watching that game?
Yeah, I don't have much to say because it stinks to lose big like that, but I didn't expect them to win this series. The Celtics are really good. And my disappointment, frustration was already there that I'm surprised they're not better when Embiid's not there. And this is the best non-Embiid collection of players they've had since drafting Joel Embiid. And the funny thing is, once you break it down even more, they played pretty well. You look at those top 4 players. They brought Paul George in. He had the suspension, health stuff. Maxey played almost every game. Edgecombe missed a few. Maxey was then out for a little bit, whatever. So there was no consistency, which I know is kind of the way the NBA goes right now. But if you really break it down, they were 9-3 when Maxey, Edgecombe, and George played without Embiid. So Embiid is he's their best and most impactful player. I love Maxey. I love the other guys. But it's so obvious in the first couple minutes of the games Embiid plays that oh, yep, that's what this guy can do. And there's nothing wrong with having that guy or trying to plan around it or whatever. And this just felt like they were putting together the best collection around him, not just to play with him, but also when he didn't play. hopefully other Sixers fans, I've long accepted that part of the deal with Embiid is he's going to struggle to stay healthy. A guy that size who plays the way he does, who came in with lower body issues. Like that's a thing that, it's okay to lean into that and know that, hey, we're not going to have him for 80 games a year. I just thought they were going to be better. And some of those numbers bore it out, but I think this is a really bad matchup for the Sixers. The Celtics are really good. And I think the biggest thing is it always looks like, so Maxey puts up the same scoring numbers with Embiid and without Embiid, but the impact Embiid has, Maxey goes from like a 39 or 34% three-point shooter when Embiid plays and when he doesn't. And that kind of space and that kind of it just looks like more of a struggle for Maxey to get to those numbers when Embiid's not there. And against a really good team like that, they've got to be the favorites in the East, and they're probably one of the favorites to win the title. And so I guess what I saw, like, it stinks, especially, came home, was excited to watch that game, but it didn't change anything about my expectation for them. I mean, the bigger thing, it was more of a big picture thing, and I think we should talk about this another time and really dive in, is, what should this team look like going forward? But right now, I think they drew a bad matchup, and honestly, that was a big loss, but I'm not really surprised, and I think without Embiid, they would really struggle to win this series.
Yeah, look, I don't know enough about the X's and O's of basketball. We've talked about how our expertise and the things we know the most are really football and baseball, and we're more fans of the other sports. But it has felt like, for me, for a couple years, whether it was Doc Rivers or now Nick Nurse, like, what is the game plan for this team? What is their plan on offense? What is their plan on defense? And it feels like there's a distinct difference. The talent, obviously, we talked about that. I think the Celtics are the best team maybe in the NBA right now. But there seems to be a distinct difference between what Joe Mazzulla has his team ready to do and what Nick Nurse has his team ready to do. At least that's how it felt in game one. But looking, getting yourself prepared for the series, you want to look a little bit into the Celtics, and you look at a little bit more game tape, and it's, what is the game plan and what can the Sixers do against them? And Mazzulla knew what to do to slow these Sixers down. They basically leaned heavy on Maxey and said, make somebody else beat us. Yeah. And they forced the Sixers to kind of play faster than they're used to in the half court, but they were able to slow down the fast break, which is one of the things that they've excelled at when Embiid's not in the lineup. And they've been good at it with Embiid in the lineup too. That's not a shot at him being out, but it feels like there's a reason these teams are the 2 seed and the 7 seed when you watch that game. And maybe not every game will be a 30-point blowout, but it became obvious watching that game that the Sixers are just outmatched. And maybe if Embiid can come back midway through the series, it gets a little more competitive. But I don't know if he can make enough of a difference to put this team over the top against what's probably the finals favorites at this point.
Agreed. So I'll tune in, and I'm hopeful, and I'm excited to see the home crowd when they get back for games 3 and 4. But I didn't expect them to win the series. I didn't really think they were going to be that close to winning the series, and I think that just confirmed it. So yeah, I think if Embiid can get back, I do feel bad. I think it's legitimate bad luck for that guy. Outside of the leg injuries, that I think a guy who's that size and does what he does is always going to have to try to navigate. He's had a lot of bad luck, legitimate bad luck, and I think that stinks for him, stinks for the team, because I think, like I said, you go in expecting there's going to be some in and out of the lineup just based on a guy being that size, and this is the other stuff that adds on to it, and it just makes it so. I don't know if it's difficult. Maybe this is me just not knowing basketball as well. I don't know if it's as difficult to have like essentially 2 versions of a team. The version the Sixers are when Embiid is there, and the version they are when he's not. I don't know if it's easy to do that like night by night, game by game. Maybe it's easy when you know he's going to be out for a month. But if he comes back and has to sit on the second line of a back-to-back, or gets a funny thing that happens and is out for 2 games, like maybe it's more difficult than I think to just say, okay, tonight with this lineup, this is how we're going to attack, and this is what we're going to do. Because we saw they had success without him when the other 3 guys were there, and it just didn't look that way the other night.
Yeah, well, like you said, I'll still be locked in and watching the game closely. But first, we have Flyers hockey tonight, game 2 in Pittsburgh. Hoping that the Flyers can go up 2-0 coming back to Philly in that raucous crowd later this week. Tomorrow night, we have game 2 up in Boston. Sixers trying to reclaim some pride, maybe, let alone split the 2 games up in Boston against the Celtics. And we'll have more on both of those games. We haven't set our next date yet. We'll normally give you a little preview when the next one's coming, but with our just coming off of the hiatus, we still got to get the scheduling figured out. So appreciate everybody who's listened before, everybody who's back for episode 15. We appreciate and love you guys. We'll give you a little bit more on the playoff teams, and we'll see what the Phillies do this week. John, any final thoughts about the Philly sports teams on the way out the door?
One other thing I want to pitch, there's, there'll be plenty of draft talk. There's new AJ Brown news, but is it actually new? The draft is this week. We'll see who the Eagles pick. We'll have plenty of thoughts on what that looks like and what those things maybe mean and how the roster is starting to take shape and what else happens around the league. We saw the Giants now have 2 top 10 picks, and everybody's expecting the Cowboys to trade up. The teams in the division have opportunities to make real big waves with the draft. And the other thing I want to pitch is we're 3 weeks away from the PGA Championship in Philadelphia. Well, at Aronimink, but in the Philadelphia area. And you and I will be there with Dad and a fourth guest to be determined right now. We'll be there for round 1, and if we can find a way to get over there for something else. But as we prep for that, I think we're gonna talk as much golf as we can and see if we can get some people to talk golf with us. So we're gonna be fired up for that. We had a blast last year at the Truist when it was at Flowertown.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, Was it Flowertown?
What was
no, it wasn't Flowertown
no.
Country Club. Philadelphia Cricket Club, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Philadelphia Country Club. But when we went over there and brought our sister, that was a blast. But we're fired up for that. 3 weeks away, and we'll be getting ourselves ramped up for it and talking golf as that approaches too.
Yeah, so definitely this week we'll get some draft coverage, some NBA and NHL playoffs for our Philly teams, an update on how the Phillies are doing on that road trip, and keep it locked in for some great guests talking all those things and golf as well leading up. Just appreciate you guys being locked in, and we'll have some more coming back for you. The hiatus is over. Brotherly Glove Podcast is back. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.